Hi everyone, thanks so much for being here. My name is Kat and I make houseplant videos here on Good and Planty. If you just happen to absolutely love this video, please consider liking it, commenting, subscribing, or following me on Instagram. All of these things help me grow my channel like a plant. Today I'm going to be talking about 5 houseplants that I successfully keep in northern facing windows. I live in Philly, so northern facing windows for me in the northern hemisphere receive the least amount of natural daylight throughout the day. Therefore, a lot of the plants I'm going to be talking about today are going to be considered low light tolerant plants. Of course, most plants really appreciate bright indirect light, but these are just plants that I've personally found do okay with northern exposure. They will probably do better in brighter indirect light, but again, these are plants that will settle for that northern exposure. If your home is pretty limited to northern facing windows and you want to provide your plants with a little bit more light, I definitely recommend looking into supplemental artificial lighting, especially for the winter months when the days are a lot shorter. I have a whole video of my grow light setup last winter in my old apartment, so I will link that up above if you want to see some of the lights that I have used. Okay, so the first plant I want to talk about today is the Philodendron Imperial Red. I have found that darker colored, more simple foliage tends to do better in northern facing windows where it receives a little bit less light. If you have a highly variegated or very light colorful plant, it probably will not do as well in northern facing windows. This plant specifically has lost a little bit of its bright red color once I put it in a northern facing window. Previously, it was getting very adequate lighting in a grow tent and the red hue was definitely a lot brighter, but I still think it's a gorgeous color and it is still colorful, just not as saturated. This plant is still putting out tons of growth. I just decreased the watering a little bit ever since putting it in slightly lower light, just because this plant has also been a product of root rot and you don't want to overwater your philodendron, especially if you are keeping this plant in northern facing windows. Just be careful and make sure you are letting the pot and plant and soil dry out completely before introducing more water. This plant will also do better with a humidifier, but it is not necessary to see this plant thrive. All right, plant number 2 is going to be the SANSEVIERIA FERNWOOD MIKADO. Most snake plants do fairly well in low light environments. I am sure that you have heard that before, but this is definitely one of my favorite varieties of snake plants. I really love the unique foliage and its compact growth, so that is why I am mentioning that plant specifically. But most snake plants will apply to this. I do absolutely want to clarify that snake plants will thrive with bright indirect light. They can tolerate lower light, which is why I'm including it in this list, but it also was in my southern facing windows list because they do really well in like a broad range of environments, which is why snake plants are such common and beloved houseplants. They are very, very flexible. So I will say that they can definitely tolerate northern facing, I was going to say southern. They definitely tolerate southern facing windows all right. I keep a couple different varieties of snake plants in there. I have the SANSEVIERIA FERNWOOD MIKADO. I also have a LAURENTII and then a HONEYI, I think is how you say it. All of those I keep in northern facing windows and they do just fine. They do grow a little bit slower than if I were to put them in brighter indirect light. And that is the only thing I want you to keep in mind. Again, similar to philodendron and really any other plant type, snake plants with more lighter foliage or variegation, brighter patterns will want brighter light. If you put those plants in northern exposure, you do risk losing a little bit of that vibrancy or variegation. And again, especially if you are keeping them in northern facing windows, make sure you are waiting for them to get completely bone dry before watering again. Otherwise, you are at risk for root rot. Plant number 3 is going to be the Syngonium berry illusion. It is one of my favorite houseplants. You all know I am a sucker for Syngonium. Syngonium in general are, I would say, pretty good for northern facing windows. Again, they are a very adaptive plant. I'm gonna get a little bit redundant here, but again, plants with more vibrant colors, bold patterns, variegation, those plants are gonna be a little bit more successful with brighter light, and I won't recommend those for northern facing windows, but darker colored foliage, more simple foliage, green foliage, that's all gonna do fairly well in a northern facing window. The berry illusion I keep there still has that really bright pink venation down the center, and I really like that. I'm glad that the plant didn't lose that when I did move it to slightly lower light. Other Syngonium that I keep in northern facing windows are the Syngonium holly. I know it's not the holly, it's very similar. It's like a tiny version of the holly, and a Syngonium army as well. That one actually did lose quite a bit of variegation, which is why I'm emphasizing that point so much. Again, make sure you are watering these plants only when they are completely dry. Syngonium do like to stay a hair moist, but I think that can be a little bit dangerous in northern facing windows. So if you are a beginner or someone who prefers drought tolerant plants, Syngonium are gonna do fine if you let them dry out completely. And the last thing I wanna say about them is I have noticed that specifically in northern facing windows where they don't get an abundance of light, they stretch towards the window very, very quickly. Every couple days, I make sure to rotate all of the pots so that I have even growth all around the pot. Next up is the Begonia Maculata WIGHTII. I am completely obsessed with this plant right now. If you follow me on Instagram, I'm sure you can tell I am constantly posting pictures about it and just obsessing over this plant. Begonias that we keep indoors are, I've noticed, a bit sensitive to harsh, bright, direct sunlight. So I have found that most of my begonias respond well to the more gentle northern light. Honestly, I can tell from the bright colors and deep green and compact growth that my begonia is perfectly content with the amount of sunlight it's getting in that northern window. Begonia do like to stay a little bit more moist and are, I would say, a little bit more picky about that. With Syngonium, you can kind of get away with letting it dry out. Begonia, I do like to keep moist, and I think a moisture meter is gonna be really useful for keeping begonias in northern facing windows because they do have a little bit of a thinner root system, and you don't wanna overwater these plants because they are super susceptible to root rot. Just keep that in mind and do keep up with the watering, but don't go crazy over there. It is going to take, I don't know, I probably water that plant. It's in a 4-inch nursery pot. I probably water it every week. Definitely don't go overboard and just be mindful of how often you're watering your begonia. Also, in terms of begonia care, I definitely recommend putting a humidifier over by your begonia and using distilled water, but I completely fail on both of those recommendations. I do not do it. I do get some crispy tips here and there, but it isn't the end of the world. Last up on my list is the PILEA CADIEREI. It's also known as the aluminum plant, so that's what I'm going to call that plant today. But that is another plant that I do keep in a northern facing window and is super happy. It is in my kitchen and literally no complaints from that plant. This plant is the newest plant to me on this list, so I don't want to speak too deeply on its care because I've only had it for maybe like 2-3 months, but I have noticed its root system is a little bit thinner and finer, similar to the begonia. I am super careful about not overwatering it. I do let this plant dry out. I think it's pretty happy with the lower light because it hasn't lost any of its like glossy sheen or bright color, which is kind of a sign if your plant isn't getting enough light. Also, it's not getting leggy. The growth is very compact, so that's why I feel fairly confident putting this plant on my list today. I really don't have any super crazy care tips for it because I just kind of water it when it looks thirsty. Those are all of, well, not all. I keep a variety of plants in my northern facing windows, but I tried to keep this list a little bit more fun than just like pothos and ZZ plant, which are also plants that will do fine in northern facing windows. I also do keep a handful of other plants in northern facing windows, which you may see in a few of my other videos, but those plants don't do as well as the plants that I mentioned today. I only wanted to recommend plants that I felt actually succeed in northern facing windows. Thank you all so much for watching today. I really appreciate it. If you aren't subscribed to my channel and you want to see more planty content from me, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Down below in the description box are a bunch of links and ways that you can support me and my channel if you want to. Please like this video if you enjoyed it today, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!